shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, welcome everybody to Wednesday's edition of End of the Age. I'm Dave Robbins, sitting in for Irvin the next couple days. He's actually traveling to Israel to do a shoot with the an Australian television program contacted us and wanted to do a program on Armageddon. And they scoured the internet to find who could they trust, somebody that could really articulate the prophecies of the Bible and really explain them in a really easy to understand manner, and they settled upon Irvin Baxter. So they came here and they've been shooting some different shots and programs here around the ministry, and now they've headed to Israel to do the Kidron Valley and the Plain of Megiddo and different things. So Irvin and his daughter Jana, my wife, are headed to Israel as we speak. They're just fixing to get on the plane here in a little while. And so I'll be joining you for today and tomorrow, and then Irvin will be here on Friday. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And I've got kind of a unique program for you today. It's probably going to end up being a two-part program today, and it'll lead into tomorrow. But I get questions all the time. Of course, we get the question, how can you guys prove we are in the end time? That's one of the big things, because if we're in the end time, then these prophecies pertain to us. If we're not in the end time, hey, this could be 100 years from now. Well, there's several ways we can prove that we're in the end time. You can talk about precursors to the mark of the beast, the gathering back to Israel to a nation, the sixth trumpet war that's just ahead of us. We could be fighting it now as we speak. Of course, the world government that's being formed, the world religion that's being formed. There's lots of prophecies, lots of ways that we can prove absolutely that we're in the end time. But the Bible says, if I want to read a scripture, and it's very key. I'm actually going to read two scriptures, because the Bible's very key that during the time of the end, a lot of these prophecies were written, but the writers didn't understand them. Daniel, John, they didn't understand what they were writing, because it was for people in another time ahead of them, future time. Daniel, in Daniel chapter 11, it's very key, because it says, this is Daniel chapter 11, verse 32 and 33, and such as do wickedly. Now this is during the time of the Antichrist, just ahead of us. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits, and they that understand among the people shall instruct many. So it's very key that we understand this scripture. During the time of the end, we do know that there will be people that understand among the people, and that they're going to be instructing many. So there's going to be an entity or a group of people that really understand these prophecies, and they're going to be able to instruct people what to do during that time. And then in Daniel chapter 12, verses 9 through 10, of course, Daniel in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 through 7, it gives a depiction of the Great Tribulation and the timing of that. Where does that fall compared to the second coming of Jesus Christ? And then Daniel asked the Lord, hey, Lord, I don't understand these visions. Tell me what these things mean, and so I can understand all these visions and prophecies and things you've given me. And in Daniel chapter 12, verses 9 through 10, the Lord replies to Daniel, and it says, and he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words of this book are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. So there's going to be a faction of people on the earth. They're not going to understand these prophecies. But then it goes on to say, but the wise shall understand. So these are two scriptures that specifically let us know during the end time, there will be a segment of people that understand the prophecies, and they're going to instruct people on what to do. Now, I'm going to talk to you today, probably in most of today's program, about Endtime Ministries. I've been wanting to do this for a long time because you really need to know. We need to look back and see what God has done for us and where He's brought us from to really be able to trust in what we're doing now. Many of you are new listeners. Some of you have been with us for years. We went on the radio in '98, so some of you have been listening to us since then. But a lot of you are coming over from our television programs and from the website, and they're finding out that we're on a nationwide radio program. And you're watching us, or you're listening to us now, and you're thinking, okay, Irvin Baxter, he's articulate, he explains everything real well, but where did he come from? Where did the Endtime Ministries come from? Where did they start? And can I really trust them? And so what I want to do today is to kind of give you an idea where we came from, some of the miracles that God has performed for Endtime Ministries, and kind of show you where we've came from over today and tomorrow, where we've came from, where we're at now, and where we're headed in the future. Because if you don't, sometimes you've got to step out of, and I love, believe me, we specialize, this ministry specializes in the prophecies of the Bible. So I like scouring the news and finding, what's pertaining to prophecy in today's news, and then coming on the radio or writing an article for our magazine about what's really going on and getting real detailed. I love doing that. Irvin loves doing that. But sometimes you've got to step out of that and look at the big picture, where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're headed in the future, so you can kind of wrap your head, because if you get so much information thrown at you, you can get to the point where you're almost like, I don't know whether I'm pitching or catching here. So sometimes you need to step back and say, okay, tell me where you've been. Where's Endtime Ministries been? If I'm going to trust you guys to tell me what these prophecies mean, where did end time come from? How did it start? Where's Irvin Baxter? Where did he start? And where am I at now? Tell me, where am I at on this timeline that God's given us? And then what's in the future? So over the next couple days, that's what my programs are going to be geared towards, is doing that. Where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're headed in the future. So Endtime Ministries, Irvin Baxter, let's start with Irvin Baxter real quick. Irvin Baxter, when he was a 19-year-old young man, he heard a message from a prophecy teacher that came through his town, and that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were the four horsemen. And he said, I really don't understand that. It didn't really jive with him. So he read the book of Revelation through 19 times in the next 30 days. Well, God was really, in the beginning, at 19 years old, calling him into a prophetic ministry. And it was ingrained in him. He felt God drawing him. So he started reading every book he could get his hands on, trying to figure all this stuff out. And that was really what started Irvin Baxter down the prophecy road, or trying to learn the prophecies, is God pulled him into it. He called him miraculously at the age of 19 years old. Well, of course, he became a full-time minister, devoted his life to God. He started evangelizing, and as he studied these prophecies, God started to miraculously reveal these prophecies to him. You say, well, why did he pick Irvin Baxter Jr.? Why is he doing it right now? Because we learn later on that we were in the end time. And remember, the Lord told Daniel, no, Daniel, I'm not going to explain these prophecies to you. Close up and seal the words of this book, because these are for the people of the time of the end. So now that we're in the end time, and it's easily proven so many different ways, God had to pick an individual or individuals to show these prophecies to, reveal them to, so that way they could tell the world that during the end time we could instruct people on what to do, where to go, and different things, and prepare them for the times just ahead. So when Irvin was about 20, 22, 23 years old, the Lord revealed to him that, and it was in 1968-ish, 66, 68, somewhere in there, that the Berlin Wall would be torn down and the two Germanys would reunite, and that would be the catalyst that would launch us into the New World Order. So he started teaching that in 1968. And so over the course of time, the Lord revealed these different prophecies to Irvin as he studied. He told me, he said, Dave, I would read encyclopedias and dictionaries until my eyeballs fell out. Because he said, when I started studying this stuff, I knew nothing. But God started revealing them prophecies to him. But there came a time in about 1986 when Brother Baxter was, God had been revealing these prophecies to him, but they kind of dried up. And in 1986, the Lord said, Brother Baxter was praying, and he said, Lord, I don't understand these prophecies, and I don't understand why you've stopped revealing these prophecies to me. It's like he hit a brick wall. And it's like the Lord spoke to him and said, I will not reveal any more prophecies to you until you publish what I've given you. And so in 1986, Irvin Baxter decided, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to publish what God has given me, these specific prophecies that God's given me, and they're all miraculous. I could tell you about each and every one of them. We don't have time, but God pulled him out of bed and told him to go buy a paper or something that would reveal these prophecies to him. And so he says, you know what, I'm going to publish it in a book. God, if you want me to do that, yes, I will. So he published a book called A Message for the President. I actually have one here, one of the original copies. It was published in 1986. And in this book, Irvin Baxter wrote that the Berlin Wall would be torn down and that the two Germanys would reunite, and that would be the catalyst that would launch us into the New World Order. And, of course, that was in 1986. That was one of his first real endeavors towards, besides just preaching about it, towards publishing anything that taught on prophecy. It was his first book, A Message for the President. Well, of course, that was written in 1986. In 1989, the Berlin Wall did come down. The two Germanys did reunite. And, of course, as a result, we moved into globalization and into a new world order type system. And that's how, of course, that's how we're functioning now. But it all began for us, Endtime Ministries, with God revealing these prophecies to Irvin Baxter and him publishing a book in 1986. Then in 1991, we started Endtime Magazine. And the story behind Endtime Magazine is very, very unique. All of these are a miracle from God, and we want to recognize those miracles on our timeline, because this is not just Irvin thinking of stuff and trying to figure all this out on his own and yee-haw, he comes up with it. No, that's not how it worked. God miraculously revealed these things to him. So he felt like God was wanting him to publish a bi-monthly magazine so he could keep everybody up to date with the current events and how they were fulfilling prophecy written 2,000 to 2,500 years ago. And he had seen the Plain Truth magazine that was put out by Herbert W. Armstrong and different things. And, you know, he said, God, I've got to show these different prophecies. What do you want me to do? He decided to do a bi-monthly magazine. Well, he was sitting in a Quest committee, which Irvin was a pastor. And so the Quest committee was a committee that he served on that was looking at different ways to bring revival to different communities in Indiana, which is where we're originally from. And he told the individuals who were on the Quest committee that he wanted to start a bi-monthly prophecy magazine. Well, of course, one of his friends chuckled and said, okay, you know, there's not much to write on. What are you going to write on after the first issue? And we've kind of laughed about it ever since, because we've published it bi-monthly since 1991. And of course, the topics are endless, what you could write on. But his friends on that Quest committee said, Irvin, we believe in what you're teaching. We believe in you. And if you want to publish a magazine, let us know when you're ready, and we will help support you and get you off the ground financially. There were 6 or 7 guys sitting there. So Irvin wrote his first magazine, started selling subscriptions, and for 1 year, he went around teaching prophecy conferences. He sold subscriptions for 1 year. And when he wrote his first magazine, when he was ready to publish it, he called the guys, all of his friends, and said, hey, I'm ready to publish. And if you said something about maybe helping me get off the ground financially, I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to launch this. Well, 1 year after that, no finances came in. Nothing. And so he's thinking, okay, Lord, I've got all these subscriptions, paid subscriptions, and I'm ready to publish the magazine, but I need some funding here that my friends promised me, and nothing's happened. He said, so I don't really know what to do. And he was down praying. And the Lord said, because he thought, I'm in hock here. I've taken people's subscription money and different things. And he said, what do I do? He was down praying, and he kind of felt an element of fear. And he told the Lord, he said, if I can't get the funding, I'm not going to be able to do this. And the Lord spoke back to him while he was on his knees in prayer that day and said, would you like to stand before me on the judgment day and say that you were afraid to do the calling that I've called you to do? Well, of course, Reverend Baxter said, no way. There's no way I'm going to do that. So he talked to his wife and said, hey, what can we, how far can we go in debt here? They figured out how far they could go in debt, keep their good name if everything went wrong. And so they figured all that out. That day, he went to the post office to pick up the P.O. box to pick up his mail. And that very day that he had prayed that, talked to his wife, there was 1 year later, there was a $1,000 check from a man named J.T. Pugh. And it was God letting Irvin know, I'm behind you all the way. I've called you into this prophetic ministry, and I will back you. I'll help you financially. I'll help you whatever you want to do. You publish it. You put it out to the world, and I'll take care of the rest. And of course, we've published the magazine since 1991, every other month, and God has supplied the need every time. But I'm letting you know that these are miraculous events, the way God drew Irvin into this and established Endtime Ministries. And it's very key to you today, because you need to know, where have we been, where are we at right now, and where are we going? Then in 1995, Irvin Baxter published printed the Understanding the End Time chart. Many of you will notice will remember it as Level 1. He wrote the Level 1 manual, and he actually had the 10 VHS tapes at that time. Of course, some of you won't even know what a VHS tape is, but he did the 10 VHS series of the Understanding the End Time. And it's kind of unique. The chart is like this right here. This is one of the original charts, and it was color graphics. It was really nice chart, 3D. It was full color, very nice chart. But one of the miracles that God performed for us was, at that time, of course, Irvin, we all live by faith. And a lot of these projects that we've done over the years were done because we stepped out on faith and God supplied the need. Well, this is one of those times. This is 95, and Irvin ordered 3,000. They got them all designed. Irvin went to the printer and ordered 3,000 of these charts on faith. Well, at that time, he owed $60,000. The printing bill was going to be $60,000 for the entire project, and he had 60 days to pay it. Well, he didn't have the $60,000. But we look back on it and kind of laugh, because the printing company printed 1,000 of the charts. Now, we were supposed to pay the job off when it was finished. They printed 1,000 of the charts, and then their laminating machine broke down. In the history of the printing company, they had done thousands of jobs, and they had never had any issues with their laminating machine. They printed 1,000 of our charts, and their laminating machine broke down. Well, they gave us the 1,000 charts that they had, and we started selling them. And they kept calling us and saying, hey, folks, we're having problems with our laminating machine and different machines printing this project, and it's taking us time and different things, and we're stretching the project out. Well, while they were having problems, we were selling the charts that they'd give us. And by the time, it actually took 6 months. Supposed to take 60 days. It took 6 months for them to complete the project. And by the time they completed the project, we had the $60,000. We had sold the charts. Some people had donated. We had the $60,000 to pay off the entire 30,000 or 3,000 charts. And God had supplied the need one more time. And many of you have been taught by somebody using our Understanding the End Time Level 1 chart. Well, that's the miracle that was behind that. Then in 1997, Irvin Baxter was on a very key interview in Houston, Texas. The interview was with Mike Anderson, and it was on a Daystar station down there. And he was talking about prophecy, of course. It's Irvin Baxter. What else? He was talking about prophecy on a television program down there. Well, the owner of the station was there that day and heard Irvin speak. And when the television program was over, he invited Irvin into his office, and he said, Irvin, he said, you've told me things that I've never heard of before. Now, before this, Irvin had felt like God had wanted him to produce a radio program. But he had no idea. He felt like God was just kind of impressing this upon him. But he said, I had no idea how you sit at a desk and you can talk through a little microphone and it goes around the world. Very few people understand how that really happens, back then especially. But so he had this on his mind. Well, the owner of the station called him in there and he said, Irvin, he said, I've been studying this stuff for years. And he said, you've told me things today, and it was so easily understood. He said, I understand these things, and I've studied it for years. But just hearing you on this program today, you've helped me really understand this. He said, have you ever thought about going on the radio? Well, Irvin says, yeah, I have thought about going on the radio, but I don't have a clue how to do it. I'm just, I'm a pastor. I've published a magazine and different things, a book, but I have no idea how to go on the radio, but I feel like God's calling me to do it. He said, I tell you what I'll do. And the man's name was Eldred Thomas. He said, I tell you what I'll do. When you go back, get all settled, get your radio program ready to go, and what I will do for you is I own the largest Christian radio station in Dallas. And when you're ready to go with your radio program, I'll clear a drive time spot for you, and I'll put you on there, and I'm not going to charge you a dime. Now, any of y'all that know media costs, they're out of this world. So for this man to do this, it had to be a miracle because God had been speaking to Irvin about going on the radio. And then he goes and he just shows up on a television program, and the owner happens to be listening to the program that day and says, tell you what, I own a radio station. I'm going to put you on it for free. And we were off to the races. We went back, set up a little radio booth in the upper bedroom of a double wide house. And it was barely big enough for him and Eddie Sachs at that time to get into. And we called Eldred Thomas. We went on the air, and the rest is history. And we started in a little bedroom, but you know what? We went on the air, and it cost us nothing because God arranged a meeting for Eldred Thomas and Irvin Baxter in 1995. Well, of course, in 1998, that's what happened. We went on the radio in Dallas, KVTT live, and our phone lines blew up. People started calling in saying, who are you? You're Irvin Baxter, who's that? Where are you from? Why are you teaching this way? And we answered phones for weeks and weeks and weeks. Well, we're still answering phones all this time later. But as a result of going on the Dallas radio station, KVTT, we had our first prophecy conference down here. A pastor from a local church called us and said, hey, why don't you come down and do a prophecy college, because there's a lot of interest in what you're doing down here. So we came down and we had a meeting at Brookhaven College in the fall of 1998. We had a prophecy conference. Well, many of you have heard the story, but at the conference at that time, the whole place was full, completely full, and out in the foyer, people crammed in there, standing room only. People were sitting around on the stairs, and the police told us that they had to turn away 500 cars that night because people were so hungry for this prophecy message, they weren't getting their questions answered. And so when we came down to do the conference, it kind of blew us away, the response that we got, because Dallas was our flagship station, and it's one of the reasons that our offices are located in Plano today. So that was in 1998. We went on our flagship station. Of course, now we're on stations all around the world. We're on, we used to be on shortwave stations, but we're on all around the United States. We're on different radio stations. And of course, if you're on the radio or you've watched us on TV and you want to watch these programs on the internet, you can go to endtime.com and you can watch these programs live and archived. So it's kind of a unique situation, and it's really neat. We have a lot of people that go on at night after they get off work and watch these programs. So I'm talking to you today about where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're going. And when we get back, I'll continue on a timeline of how God miraculously called us into this ministry, and you can trust that this is a God-called ministry and that we go right by the Bible, and it's miraculous from the inception.
This trip was a special experience for me. My study of the Bible has been enhanced after seeing Israel. The guides and planners for this trip did an excellent job of taking care of us. The hotels and furnished meals were top-notch. This is a trip of a lifetime. Sign up and go. Bert from Arizona. Come with us as we walk in the footsteps of Jesus and learn about the end-time story on our Israel Holy Roman Empire tour. The Bible prophesies that the Antichrist and false prophet will come out of the Holy Roman Empire. We will be touring the capital of the European Union in Brussels, Belgium, where the rebirthed Holy Roman Empire was fulfilled. We will also visit the Charlemagne Cathedral in Aachen, Germany, who was the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. We will be touring the Hall of the Caesars in Frankfurt, Germany, and much more. When we get to Israel, we will see the Mount of Olives, the Garden Tomb, the Temple Institute, Bethlehem, the Western Wall, the Sea of Galilee, the Mount of the Beatitudes, and more. Irvin and Judy hope you will come with them and experience the Israel Holy Roman Empire tour to share one of their favorite places on earth with you. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com for more information.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com to continue to listen to today's broadcast.
Welcome back, everybody. What I'm doing today, I'm talking about a topic. It's probably going to be a two-part program today and tomorrow. But I'm discussing with you where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're headed. It's good to step back sometimes because you can't see the forest for the trees. So you need to step back and say, okay, what's the big picture here? What's really going on? And furthermore, who's Endtime Ministries? Who's Irvin Baxter? Where did he start? And how did they get to where they're at now? And what's really the goal of Endtime Ministries? So over the course of the program today, I'm going over, I went back from the beginning of where Irvin came from and how Endtime Ministries started, and I'm walking down just a few of the miracles that God has performed for us over the years to help build this ministry. This ministry is a God-called entity. It's not something that, it's not a money-making entity. It's nothing like that. And to go into a prophecy ministry, it's kind of unique. Who just chooses that? You got to be a God-called individual, a group of individuals who would tackle something like that, because there's no way you could do it on your own. You've got to have God's hand in this. And basically, we work for God. God directs this ministry. Every morning from 8 to 9, we have prayer and devotions here. Without that, we have no direction. And so we can't do this without, number one, God, and number two, your support. So we're all in this together. Why? Because it's time. We're in the end time. The Lord told Daniel, close up and seal the words of this book, because it'll be opened at the time of the end. And that's what we're doing. We're in the end times. The prophecies have been revealed, and we talk about them every day. So I'm going through some different miracles of how God miraculously brought us from the beginning to where we're at now. In 1999, it's a unique miracle that happened to us because we were in a home that was just a small double. All of Endtime Ministries was crammed in this little house. And it's a unique miracle because there was a huge business, which used to be a bank, right across the street from our church in the double. Well, and it would have made a great place for End Time to be, but there was a huge company in there. And they sold different products, and my mother-in-law, Irvin's wife, went over to the building to one Friday before to buy some. The Friday before, a gentleman working there was going to sell it. She didn't know at that time, but she went over there to buy some cleaner. And she said the owner was there, and she talked to him, and you know, how you doing, different things, struck up a conversation. And he said, well, honestly, he said, I'm fixing to sell my business, and we're getting everything ready for me to sell. I'm going to put it on the market on Monday. This was on a Friday. She said, well, you're not believing that. You're not believing this, but we need some more space right now. And we've looked at your building, but we thought you're going to be a long-term owner here. There's no way you'd ever sell. And he said, well, I'm fixing to list the building on Monday. Well, she went back and got Irvin. They went over there and talked to him. And we ended up purchasing the building. And before we come down to Dallas, we were in that building that God miraculously supplied to us. We got it at a great deal because the guy never put it on the market. We went in and bought it from him, and it was a great deal. And God supplied a need. We were crammed in that little house. God knew we were fixing to explode, and so my mother-in-law just went over there, struck up a conversation. He said, well, I'm fixing to sell the building on Monday. She said, well, hold on a minute. Before you do that, let me go get my husband. She went and got Irvin. He went over there, and we ended up purchasing the building. It was a unique miracle, and it's only one of the many that God has helped us with over the years. So that brings us to 2004, 2005. In 2004, just before 2005, when we moved down here, 2004, the pastor at a local church down here who had been teaching our End Time Ministry material and holding Bible studies, and his church was growing as a result of that, he was down praying one day, and the Lord told him, call Irvin Baxter and invite him to move down here to Dallas, team up with you, and I will use these two entities to reach the world in these last times. Well, the pastor kind of, hesitated because he thought, hey, this is a huge organization, and he's going to think I'm nuts if I call him to have him come down here. Well, over the course of many days of prayer and devotions, the pastor called Irvin and told him what the Lord had told him. Well, of course, Irvin said, I've got to pray about this. There's no way I'm going to make a life-changing move without going to the Lord in prayer. Well, they did that. They ended up coming down here for just a meeting, just to meet the pastor and see what he had going on here and what it was all about. The Lord moved in and spoke in the meeting and said, I have joined you two together, and I want to use you two as a combined entity to help reach the world from Dallas. Well, we had prayed about it and was seeking God's face, and because it's a huge move to move a ministry from there, Irvin pastored a church, and to move it down here to Dallas. But through much prayer and devotion and different things, we decided, our flagship station was here, KBTT. We decided to move to Dallas, move the whole ministry down here. It was a miracle, believe me. But most of these miracles were devoted to Irvin and the building of the ministry. But when God really let me, Dave Robbins, know that we were in the will of God is when we first moved down here, we were in an annex building over by our church on 502 Beltline Road in Garland. And I came down here early. It was an old daycare. The church bought it and was going to let us move into it. It was about 5,500 square feet. I mean, it was really small. But God let me know that we were in His will when I came down early in 2005 to remodel the annex building. I had to completely gut the building, and I was going to build offices and everything in there, completely remodel it. And I basically came down by myself to do a big job. Well, I thought, well, I've got 3 months to do this. Me and Irvin had talked, and he said, hey, we'll plan on moving in about 3 months. We'll close up shop here. We had to get another pastor in for the church. A lot of different things had to happen. And he said, I'll come down and we'll bring everything down in about 3 months. So I thought I had 3 months to complete the project. Well, when I got down here, I was here about a few days, and Irvin called me and said, hey, the guy that's going to set up our radio station, all the equipment, has to go out of the country in 7 weeks. And so he said, we need to come down there in 7 weeks. He had to leave the country in 8 weeks. We need to come down there in 7 weeks to put his equipment in. Well, we couldn't put the equipment in until I got a certificate of occupancy. And so consequently, I went from 3 months to do the project to 7 weeks to completely gut and remodel this building. And so I just started working like crazy. And I had the church folks would come over and help me every once in a while, and we gutted the building, and I got ready to build it all back. And the miracle comes in. The first miracle was when I was ready to build everything back. I've got all these huge stacks of lumber and everything, and I'm just getting ready to frame everything. And I come in early that morning, and I'm all by myself. No help. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to hit my deadline. And I made a pot of coffee. I come back towards the front, and there was a gentleman standing there at the front door. I let him in, and I said, how are you doing? He said, I'm doing great. My name's Herb Parker. And I said, and now remember, I'm fixing to just frame all this. I've got all the lumber laid out. He said, I heard you need some help. And I thought I'd show up down here to help you. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I'm a framer. He said, I frame houses and different things. And I said, well, you're never going to believe this. I said, but I'm just fixing to start framing today, and you show up this morning. And I knew that he was a miracle sent from God, because I had never met the man nor talked to him in my life, but he had heard on the radio that we needed help. He showed up the very day that I was going to start framing. I knew it was a miracle from God. Another miracle that God performed during the project was I had 30 doors to put in the building. Exterior doors, interior doors. I had them all painted, and my deadline was coming up ahead of me. The guy was going to come put the radio equipment in, and I looked at all those doors standing all the way around that big room and outside and everything, and I thought, there's no way. My deadline, I'm never going to hit that. It's going to throw us in a kilter. And as I stand before the Lord today, a man pulled up in the driveway out front. He had a huge trailer on the back. He walked inside and he said, you need any help? And I kid you not, I said, what can you do? He said, I'm a professional door installer. He said, I go around here to all these big new home places and I install their doors for them. I said, you're never going to believe this. I said, but I've got all these doors standing around here to hang. And I said, I could use your help today. He started throwing those doors in. I mean, and it was just a few days done. And I called my father-in-law and I said, you know what? If I had any reservations about moving down here, I don't have any now. Dallas is the place we're supposed to be. God is with us. I just had 2 huge miracles, and it happened over the course of a job. I had a plumber show up, do all the plumbing. I mean, God was letting me know, Dave Robbins, I know right where you're at. I've called you down here, and I'm going to show you that I want you to be here. And I know that the God of all creation was looking at me a couple different times, letting me know this is where I want you, because I called this ministry years ago. I called the leader of this ministry, Irvin Baxter, and I called you, and I called Endtime, because we're in the end times, and I established Endtime Ministries, and I'm going to let you guys know that I'm with you 110%. Of course, in 2005, we then moved 7 families from Indiana to Texas. And we came down and we functioned in the annex for 2 years. Then in 2007, we ended up moving to our present headquarters. And it's funny because my wife, before we ever knew we were going to move here, drove around this building 7 times, kind of like Joshua fighting the Battle of Jericho. She drove around this building and prayed 7 times that God would give us this building because it's in an excellent location. She thought it looked nice. Well, a few months later, we ended up leasing space here and moving in the building. And it's unique because the building it's a 2-story building, but part of the 2nd floor is left off because the original owner wanted to put a television studio in here. Now, it's one of the only buildings in this entire area that had enough height of ceiling where we could put our lighting grid and stuff in. Do you think God knew anything about that originally when they were building? Why they would leave part of the 2nd-story floor out for a television studio? The original owner never did that. But when we came in here and remodeled, of course, we put a television studio in, and I'm sitting in it right now. So it was another miracle of God. God built this building just for us. So before we hit the break, I want to thank each of you for all you've done over the years to help make all of this possible. And over the last part of the program, I'm going to go over a few more miracles to let you know where we've been. God's behind us 110%. And then I'll finish the program tomorrow.
Study prophecy wherever you go with... Listen, will is the world, or seeds of our nation and your the end time novels like Third Temple and Dark Intentions written by Irvin Baxter. Maybe you feel bombarded by what's going on in the news and you just hear some good old-fashioned preaching. We have tons of sermons taught. You can entire Understanding the End Time series while driving to work, cooking dinner, or wherever your busy day takes you. Let our audio library accompany you by going to endtime.com/store and click the audio downloads.
The world's greatest revival just ahead. America's God-given destiny, breaking prophetic fulfillments, and the Great Tribulation. With topics such as these, you are not going to want to miss upcoming End Time Prophecy conferences. Irvin Baxter will be traveling to many cities where he'll be teaching these exciting lessons. To those of you in Hurst, Texas, Sewanee, Georgia, and Brooklyn, Arkansas, he'll be heading your way soon. Come meet our End Time team and other people like you who want to learn what God has in store in the days ahead. View our wide selection of prophecy materials and take End Time lessons home to share with family and friends. We hope you will come and be encouraged, gaining new understanding as prophecy continues to unfold. Go to endtime.com and under events, click the conference link or call 1-800-END-TIME to find more details about these conferences. We'll see you there.
Well, I hope you're enjoying going back through all the miracles as much as I did putting this program together, because to remember what God did for us in the past is very key, because it helps us. If God has supplied all our needs up to this point, then I can rest assured that He'll supply all my needs in the future. I don't have to worry about the future, because I look back and I think, oh, Lord, you did that miracle for us. Look at how you helped us here. You helped us out of this situation. And I can tell you, there's never been a time that God has failed us. Never. Not one time. And so I know that in the future, I can rest assured. I can take it to the bank. God's not going to fail us in the times just ahead. And that's my program over today and tomorrow. Where have we been? Where are we at right now? And where are we headed across the near future? So, moving on my list, I've got a few more that I want to get to before we end the program. Of course, we got to our Endtime television studio here, the headquarters. We started shooting programs and different things, and we started playing those programs in 2009 on the Inspirational Network. We sent them programs. They started playing them and different things. But our big break on television came in 2010 when when Irvin went down in Grapevine to be on a Daystar interview with Marcus and Joni Lamb. And while he was on the program that day, now let me give you a little background behind this. Just prior to that, we were looking to go on television, not necessarily on Inspiration, a lot of different things, but to go on some of the real big ones, Daystar, TBN. And we were in a management meeting just prior to him going on this interview at Daystar, and we said, we were sitting around talking, hey, we don't know how to really get on one of these big things. We don't know how to get in there. How do you get your program on TBN or Daystar or some of these real big networks? How is that even possible? We didn't even know who to call. And Daystar called Irvin and said, hey, we want you to come down for an interview. Joni Lamb had known Irvin for a long time. She had listened to him for the years on radio. Called him down there just to do an interview on Daystar. Well, watching that interview, little did we know, was Paul Crouch, the owner of TBN at the time. Of course, he's passed on now. But he was watching the interview, and the day after he got off the interview of Daystar, Jay Jones, the program director for Paul Crouch at TBN, called and said, Paul Crouch would like Irvin Baxter to come out and do an interview on TBN. Well, we had just been talking a few days earlier and said, how can we get on TBN? We've got this television programs. They look great, but we want to get them on some of these big networks. Who do we even call? He goes down here and does an interview on Daystar, and Paul Crouch was listening. Next day, we get a call. Hey, can you come be on an interview with Paul Crouch? Well, of course, absolutely. Of course, we're not going to say no. Irvin goes out there. The first interview was with Jack Van Impe and Joe Vancouvering. You all know, a lot of you have seen it, where when he got out there, Paul Crouch comes down into the green room. Him, Irvin, Joe Vancouvering are sitting there. Jack Van Impe is going to be coming in over a feed with a live stream feed. And Paul Crouch says, okay, gents, I know you're both pre-trib here, right? And Joe Vancouvering says, oh, yeah, I'm pre-trib, because he knows they're going to be talking prophecy. He says, oh, yeah, I'm pre-trib. And Irvin Baxter said, well, I used to be. Well, of course, Paul Crouch was like, whoa, hold on, stop the presses. Irvin, you used to be a pre-trib believer. Where are you at now? Oh, yeah, Mr. Crouch, I believe in a post-trib rapture. Well, of course, guess what the program is going to be like? Jack Van Impe, Joe Vancouvering, and Irvin Baxter, and Paul Crouch, Matt Crouch, going back and forth on who's pre, post-trib, and why do you believe that? Well, at the end of the program, Paul Crouch looks at Irvin and says, do you have a TV program, a television program? And Irvin says, as a matter of fact, I do. And he said, I want you on my network. Now remember, a couple weeks before, we were sitting in a management meeting here in this building thinking, how can we get on TBN? How can we get on a Daystar? A day later, the program director calls. He goes out, does an interview on TBN. Boom. God opens the door. We were thinking of who to even call. And God says, I tell you what, boys, let me do this. And He opened the door for us. And we've been on TBN, Daystar, and we're on all the networks right now. We started on TBN, of course, in 2010. We went on Daystar. We're on the Middle East TV. We're all over the place now. Why? Because God said, I want you there, and I'll open the doors. You do your part, I'll do my part, and the rest is history. It's been a miracle, one right after another from God. Why? Why? Why do all this? Because it's time. We're in the end time. And it's time for us to do this. So God said, I'm going to reveal this stuff to somebody. I'm going to establish a ministry. And I'm going to get this word out. And God started opening doors for us way back in 1986. And He's been opening doors ever since. Then, of course, we went on TBN 2010. Then in 2013, Labor Day weekend, we launched another Jewish Holocaust to help fund the JPC College in Israel to help the Jews in the revival that's coming. And in 19 days, we raised $1 million. Everybody saw the need. God laid this on Brother Baxter's heart, and many of you know the story. And he said, the Lord said, hey, I want you to establish this college. I want you to do this, which the college was a miracle as well. But God laid all this on his heart, and Brother Baxter said, that's a lot of money to go ask people for. And the Lord said, hey, I've laid this on your heart. I'll supply the money. We went on the radio, television, asked people for it. We raised $1 million in 19 days, and we have a Jerusalem Prophecy College in Israel today as a result of God laying it on Irvin Baxter's heart, and you, our faithful listeners and supporters, helping with the need. So we're all in this together. Everybody listening and supporting us, Endtime Ministries, and God. We're all in this together. And that's how we need to stay all the way to the end and what's just ahead of us. Then, of course, in 2014, we raised the money to ship the magazine to every home in Israel once the Middle East peace agreement is signed. We're ready to do that right now as we speak. So, as you can see, now listen, folks, this is just, 10 or 12 of the major miracles that God has performed for Endtime Ministries since the beginning. And it's very key that we look back. It was always good for Israel, everybody in the Bible, to look back. You didn't want to lose faith because look at all the miracles that God had done for them. Think of it like this. Look at when Israel came out of Egypt, out of bondage in Egypt. They come to the Red Sea and they're like, you know what? We should have just stayed in it. We're all going to die right here. They start complaining. God takes them through the Red Sea. After that, they complained. Now, if God took you and I through the Red Sea and you looked at a miracle like that, God had done for you specifically, and then you come up against some little thing in your life, could you not look back and say, you know what? God took care of that big thing for me. This is nothing for Him. It's nothing. So you know over the course of your life, look at all God has done for me. All the many blessings, all the miracles that He's done in my life. So I've got a hope in the future that He'll take care of it in the future just like He done in the past. Well, that's how we live our lives here at Endtime Ministries. We always want to reflect on what God has done from the very beginning. We look back. I tell these stories all the time to individuals who call in. Hold on a minute. How are you guys going to do this project? What's going to happen? What are we going to do in the near future? Are we going to be able to eat? What do I do with my money? Where am I going to live? And I simply say, you know what? Let me tell you a story of what God has done for us. And I've had God perform miracles not only in Endtime Ministries, but in my own life, personally. I've seen God do many miracles for Irvin, myself, my family, different people around our church, and especially Endtime Ministries, that lets me know, you know what? I can look back over the course of Endtime, over the course of my life, look at all the miracles God's done for me, and I can look towards the future at what I know is coming and say, you know what? God will take me through that. I don't even have to worry about any of it because God's going to take me through it. Because look at all the things He's done for me over the past. So in this two-part program, today and tomorrow, I wanted to show you, you can trust Endtime Ministries. You can trust Irvin Baxter, not because he's anything special, which he is in my eyes, but it's because he is a God-called individual, and it's time. So you can trust, God's called him into this from years ago. And you can trust what he says. You know why? Because it always goes back to the Bible. Anything that Irvin will get on the radio and say, anything that I will get on the radio and say, it all goes back to the prophecies of the Bible. We're not going to steer you wrong, because I can tell you, if we started to steer you wrong, God would move us out of the way and move somebody else in our place that would steer you right. So if you've got your eyes upon the Lord and your eyes in the Word of God, you can never go wrong. And that's how we live our lives here at Endtime Ministries. I look back at where God's brought me from and all the many miracles that He's helped us with, and I think, you know what? Through the pretty sticky times that are coming in the near future, I know God's gonna supply. The Bible says, take no thought which ye shall eat, drink, or wear, because your heavenly Father knows you have need of this stuff. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So if you're doing God's business and you've got God's business number one in your life, you don't have to worry about what's coming just ahead. You worry about teaching and preaching the gospel of the kingdom of God. That's your job. And if you'll do that, God will take care of everything else. And so that's how we're going to function in the times just ahead. So on tomorrow's program, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to show you where we're at now and what we can expect over the next several years. Because like I said, you need to stand back and look. Where have we been? Where are we at now? And how are we going to make it through the times just ahead? Because like I said, we're all in this together. We've talked about it for years. People have said, hey, when this stuff starts really coming down, we're coming to Dallas. And I talked to Irvin and I said, you know, our parking lot is going to be unbelievably full when this stuff starts happening because nobody wants to go through it alone. Well, we're not going to go through it alone. So join me on tomorrow's program to continue on this 2-day set. Where have we been? Where are we at now? And where are we headed? Because I can tell you, because of the miracles that I've seen, I know God's going to be with us in the future.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.